8:32, and ask for approval of the agenda.
Can we addend the agenda to have the approved expenses to be the $16,376.46? And then the approval of expenses total,
Yep.
or slate on it came in, and I gave every board member a copy of
What was that number again?
$16,376.46.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think everybody received an update on that as well. I would entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Jody. Thank you, Bruce. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Public comment. Anybody here? Thanks for coming. Hearing none. Moving on to approval of minutes from the October 13 meeting. Any questions, comments, motion to approve? Thanks, Bruce.
Second.
Thanks, Dave. Any discussion? Thank you, Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Jeff McCullough, Department of Public Works update. Please.
I guess we're just doing our normal stuff. We pulled the baskets down. We pulled the flower baskets off of River Street. One of the yield signs got hit, so we removed those two. Probably not necessary this time of year. We did sidewalk saw cutting on the Riverwalk, about $9,000 worth to remove trip hazards. Anything else specifically you'd like updated?
The Evergreen Removal, is that on schedule, on a schedule?
It is on the list.
Okay. Do you think it'll be done this fall yet, or this year yet?
I think this fall, yeah.
Okay. The other thing that, and maybe this has been answered, the purchase of more crosswalk signs, where are we at with that?
Jeff sent me a total. I have $1,560.92. He approved under $1,000, so.
Was that the first one or the second one?
That's the second one, yeah. It was $220.82 per sign for 5 of them, $331.27 for the double sign, and $125.55 for shipping.
So let me be clear on those. I gave Christina numbers. Several weeks later, our preferred vendor finally got back with us. So the single signs are, for 5 of them, would be $1,104. And I think that's what you originally had requested. These are also surface mounted and breakaway.
Okay. What does
So-
service mounted mean?
There's a system where we'll anchor them right to the asphalt,
Okay.
right into the asphalt. And then we'll unbolt them this time of year, and then put a cover plate on them to protect them from snow plowing and getting dirt and stuff in them.
Okay.
And then we can remount them in the spring. So it's what I've been looking for all along. Finally got somebody to give us prices on them. The other 331 was something that we had discussed, or at least contemplated, is a sign that had the yield on both sides that could be mounted in front of the brewery. And we've had some discussions with our engineering group. Everybody's aware at the brewery, people cross from the parking lot straight to the front door. Nobody goes to the intersection and uses that. If you use the cowpath method, which like universities use, they put sidewalks where the paths are through the grass instead of building sidewalks and trying to get people to go that way. The difficulty is that a crosswalk could be put mid-block at that location, but there's really no landing zone on the parking lot side because there's 2 driveway entrances there. So we're still kind of trying to come up with something creative. A yield sign at least sitting there could slow traffic and could improve that, but that wasn't on your original list of what you requested.
Yeah.
So for the 5 downtown, about $1,100.
Okay. Can we, what's that?
Plus shipping.
Yeah. Can we just get those coming? So
Yeah.
we have them?
Do you want that in a one?
It sounds like you guys are still working on,
Yeah, we can always get that later.
okay. I mean, obviously it will slow down traffic, but maybe a better idea will come up in the meantime, but it'd be nice to have these ready to install for spring.
Okay, I can make that happen.
I think we already approved the expenditure, right?
It just wasn't the right
Oh.
amount, so it is over.
We approved 1,000.
Do you know what the exact total is for that?
I don't know what the shipping.
It's 1104.10.
I don't think we need it, it's under $500, so.
Okay.
And shipping's gonna be a couple $100. I mean,
Yeah.
but we may be able to, or I can try to order them with some other stuff that we're getting.
Okay.
Since there's not a time crunch on that, and maybe reduce that shipping, and
Okay.
maybe that's something I could try to absorb.
I'd say let's proceed. It's most likely gonna be under $500 for the extra.
Okay.
And then, Kyle, can I go back to your Evergreen question?
Oh, yeah.
So we have a new, we had a group for a long time that adopted the butterfly gardens next to 440. That group ran its course, let's say. So another group came out, adopted them in the past year, hasn't done a lot with them. And then another group has come and adopted them, and they want to do different things than what the DDA had discussed. And they want to plant trees, and they want to remove trees. So that enters into, if that happens, I have to get tree commission involved. So there's 3 or 4 entities now that all have interest, and I'm not sure who makes the decision and who's the appropriate group, and
Does that have an impact on removing the evergreens that are overgrown?
I'm not sure what the overall vision is for that group, but they want to kind of have a redo. So I would anticipate it causes the removal, but the trees, the berry trees, I'm not sure, I can't remember what kind they are.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, they want those gone, they want to replace them with something else, and so I'm just not sure if I need to do a coordinated effort, or
Are you asking?
I'm asking for suggestions, and
I would just like.
we're kind of stuck in the middle of this, you know?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, the last 2 walkthroughs we did last year and this year, we agreed that the evergreens in particular are overgrown, and
Yeah.
no matter what, I think it would look better without them, even if temporarily just mulch is put in. That's just my opinion, anybody can speak up here, but I just feel like in order to move forward with any landscaping, those need to come out in all areas, because those are older than the streetscape, so.
So maybe Public Works proceeds with that aspect. We go back to the adopted volunteer group, say if you have a vision, let's do a sketch. Maybe I bring it back to the DDA, and
Yeah, I don't know if we need to be involved, but if you want us involved, we can do that.
I sympathize with your position.
well, yeah, and I'm just trying to, I don't want to rock anybody's boat, and I don't want to curb anybody's enthusiasm to do improvements. Or the board could say, let them go, and
Can I ask a question? I mean, is there, Can we do some sort of memo of understanding with these groups, or a letter of intent, or some sort of?
We have a program.
Where, okay, if you're gonna adopt this space, then we need you to take care of this space.
Yeah, we do have a program. It's called Adopt a Park.
Okay,
And it was put together by the Parks Commission probably 5-6 years ago. And it's fairly, it's thorough, but informal.
okay.
And there's reporting requirements. They're supposed to list their intentions. I will tell you, like with most volunteer groups, they come in hot and heavy and then they kind of fade away. So the program's in place.
Okay.
It gets a lot of interest, and we probably have 3-4 groups a year that sign up in various parts of the city, but they don't seem to last that long.
And the issue is that by the time it's recognized and noticed, it's looking bad, generally.
Well, I mean, we have groups that do everything from pick up trash in a park to, we had the North River Walk was adopted by 2 joint groups. I don't think they've ever done anything.
Is there any money associated with these adopt spaces at all? I'm just trying to find a way to have some sort of accountability. So if you adopt a space, yeah, you're a volunteer group, but does that adoption include any sort of fee or anything like that?
They don't pay. Usually, if they choose to do some improvements, say a group wanted to renovate playground equipment. So the city would purchase materials, paint, sometimes supplies, or provide them materials that we have, and then they would go out and actually, most of it is the labor portion of it that
Sure.
they're doing. Now, like this butterfly garden, they may come back to the city and say, well, we'd like to have 4 new trees in here, can you purchase the trees for us? Or they may go out and find donations, and so it's really a hybrid, and it's pretty flexible on what people want to do.
Okay. So if the city were to purchase trees, for example, using your example, could we then at that point say, okay, the city is gonna do this, now we need to have a commitment from your group that you'll be in there once a month to keep it going? Just as an example.
Yeah, there's really no enforcement mechanism on that.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get at without really knowing that that's what I was trying to get.
Yeah, I mean, and
Like, can the cops go down there and go? No, okay.
No, I-
Pretty much with the Evergreens in there, 'cause they've pretty much taken over.
Okay.
there's
Sorry for asking so many questions, I'm just trying to.
Well, it's
figure
okay,
out how
'cause
to hold these people.
that's part of the struggle of what we deal with,
Sure,
is there's
absolutely.
always pledges and commitments, and a lot of time that they do fulfill those, and often they don't, or they stop, and there's no recourse after that.
It's just a suggestion, but it sounds like there is process in place for managing this, that the parks, the Parks Committee has established, right? So the Adopt the Park thing, I would treat the butterfly gardens like a park and get it under that program. And if there needs to be strengthening of oversight, then that should be done through the Parks Committee.
Yeah, once, when a group typically approaches us and says, hey, we'd love to do X, Y, and Z, we encourage them to go through that Adopt a Park program, so they fill out the paperwork. They kind of realize and formalize, when they fill out the forms and stuff, what they're pledging to do. And then the Parks Department works with them to help keep them organized, provide materials and supplies, and usually a lot of cleanup that will help them with.
Yeah, that might be more workable. If it needs more oversight, then that's I think they should be reporting. If you sort of adopt a public space, you should be reporting to some public body regularly.
Yeah. So, and I just bring it up because the DDA board, through the walkthroughs, had specific input, and this may differ from that, and I just didn't want this group to be upset if it's different, or them to be upset because you see it different.
I don't want to get into the minutia of it or micromanage individual little landscaping projects. The evergreens in particular, that we all agreed on need to go. And I can't see them disagreeing with that. I mean, they're really not a part of that. They are next to it. But,
Right.
So,
Okay, well, we'll at a minimum proceed with the evergreen removals.
Okay. Can I ask something about not in an area of my expertise clearly, the invasive species that's all over the Riverwalk that we were talking about, the knotweed,
Japanese knotweed?
right? Is this the time of the year that the eradication program happens?
No, it's typically they will do it in the spring in most places. However, it's a chemical treatment, and the chemical treatment that they do in the spring shouldn't be done by water. So the first part to mid-August is when the appropriate chemical is used along the Riverwalk. So those were treated in August of this year.
Okay. So there isn't, what I was getting to is this is not labor intensive? This is not something that you need volunteer help with?
No.
Okay.
We contract with the Invasive Species Network.
Okay.
They're out of Grand Traverse, but they cover all of northern Michigan, northwest Michigan. They are funded by grants and donations and that sort of thing. The city contributes to that group because we had a budgeted item for Phragmites at Man-Made Lake that we treated annually. So instead of contracting that out, they don't charge us for the knotweed treatments. But we do have a council-approved contract with them. But then instead of me paying a contract for the Phragmites, we give them that equal money, and they're more than happy to do the rest of the work for us.
Okay, good. And with the program that's in place now is sufficient to take care of the problems that we were looking at when we did the walkthrough?
On the public property, yes.
Yeah.
The majority of the knotweed along the Riverwalk is on private property, and the majority of it was on the Little River Band's property. So we were able to put the Invasive Species Network in touch with the Little River Band, and they have a contract with them now. So the majority of it is being taken care
I
of.
was gonna ask that follow-up because I wondered if Little River Holdings could help you guys with that, because I recall from the walkthrough that was just down the slope from
Yeah,
the House of Flavors.
yeah, so we looped in Tom St. Dennis,
Awesome.
and
Great,
we got them on board, so.
cool.
But one thing you should understand is there's no labor in this because they have staff that come out and spray it. You have to let it die. And it's gonna come back up this year, and then we're gonna have to wait for them to treat it again. And eventually it just reduces, and eventually it'll be gone. But I think we've been treating the massive colonies along Veterans Oak Grove for 6 years now, but it's almost completely gone.
not to belabor this, but do you know if, on the north side of Annie's Books, next to Barry's building, if that's been, I noticed the last couple of years there's some there. It's private property.
If it's private property, I'm not aware of that being on the list.
Okay.
But if the property owner wants to, I can put them in touch with our contacts, and they could get on that list.
I don't know, do you know if there's any on your property there?
There isn't.
Can I just ask one more question, Jeff? I'm sorry. How did everything turn out with the light bulb question? Is there,
The street light?
yeah, that's,
Comparison.
yeah,
Down here?
yeah.
Yeah, that was damaged and ordered right after it was damaged.
Oh,
So
that's too bad.
we're still waiting for all the materials to come in.
Okay. Yeah,
Oh, okay, I was talking about the sample LED
Right.
light that you had put up.
Oh,
I think we're waiting for quotes on
Okay.
thank you.
Anything else for Jeff?
that. Jeff, on your evergreens, you were also going to do the ones on the Riverwalk, like in those center sections. I know the one that stands out to me is the one down by River Street Station. It has a tree in the middle and then the
Yeah.
evergreens all around and like a triangle.
At the bottom of the stairs?
Just-
I think it was all,
Yeah.
wasn't
Okay,
it?
you've got it, okay. Just want to make sure. And then Kyle, you had asked about the green bush pavers, and Jeff, I noticed in your email, you said DTE was responsible. Are we reaching out to them to see what their plan of getting that back? whole-
Yeah, we did reach out to them and they said they were gonna be fixing it. I'm a little surprised because they did a gas main extension down at First Street and disrupted a lot of stuff. And their crews came back in and did all the repairs there, and I thought they were gonna be done at the same time, but we can follow back up.
Two last questions. I noticed that the streetlights, the posts are getting rusted, and I don't know what the painting schedule for that is. Is that something on target, or when are those scheduled to be done? Just because they look bad, all the streetlights in the DDA district.
We've talked about that as part of the, I mean, it's on the list, it's on the list of things, capital improvements that are necessary, nothing scheduled for it.
Okay, and how about the benches? Are those getting done, the ones that are on the, I know that Manistee Products done the ones on the Riverwalk. This winter, are we working on the ones that are going on River Street? Because those look really sad.
We are going to be renovating benches, but it won't be all of them. We have 84 of those benches. So
Okay.
there's no way we can get them all done in a year. And actually, I've been working with two different companies to figure out, I've been working with two different companies to look at how we can modify those benches and get rid of the wood and use some type of synthetic. But there's 84 of them, so it's a lot of money. And then there are still, people are still interested in purchasing the memorial benches, so I'm trying not to purchase any more with the wood, trying to come up with what the end product would be, so when we purchase new ones, we don't have to go through those maintenance. Because the way these are stained, they only last 3 years, and then they look faded and,
That's kind of, it just was looking, they were looking very dated, so that's why I was asking that question.
Thank you, Mrs. Nicola. Okay, moving on to approval of financials from October 21. Any questions about financials that Christina can answer? Or Tamara?
There's only one move that I want to make, and that's in advertising. That's the social district, like cups and signs and things like that. I put it under advertising, but I think we'll move that under office expense advertising. I think that's going to be recurring.
Okay.
There's two line items, so just I'll have the accounts, just move it to the other line item.
Okay.
Other than that, there's nothing. We shouldn't have any more hops and pops of the numbers that are there look good. We may have one or two refunds coming back. I don't know if we've gotten all the beverage refunds.
Okay.
Other than that, I think that one's pretty set.
What was the bottom line on house and props?
Right now, it's $25,584.
Okay. If there's no questions, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Jenny.
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Jody. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. DDA Director's Report, Christina.
Oh, does that approve the expenses, the energy bills as well?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. All right, well, Sladeville is the word of the month, that is taking quite a large amount of time. Julia Cook and I have been working directly on that. She's been a really good asset. Horses definitely throw a monkey wrench into grades. So learning her a little, but we're getting there. It should go off well. The food truck court is exciting. We have 3 food trucks so far, the Southern Pieces, Clock Buckets, doing some soups and cornbread. And then we have Thai mango. And so we'll look for one more, along with Rory, the hot dog guy, and that will be over on Hope Street. So something new, but going over well and getting a lot of press. But anyways, they're doing well expense-wise. We have about $20,500 in sponsorship in right now, and so far $9,309.56 in expenses. So on both sides, it's pretty balanced. It will not be this year. So anyway, so finalizing all those details and getting that all set. It certainly could use either a new committee or something. There's not a lot of active participants. There's 2 of us doing 90% of the work. So.
Can I just jump in there? On that note, I had a meeting with Stacy last week, sort of just a checkup between our contract, the DDA's contract with the chamber, and this was a topic of conversation. We need to remember that events are not in the DDA's contract with the chamber. And so this one, being Sleigh Bell in particular, the chamber, primarily Christina, has just stepped up and done it, but this is something that we need to talk about for next year, how we want to manage that, because it's not part of the, I think it's $75,000 a year contract. So Stacy and I batted around a few ideas, maybe trying to, hire somebody that would manage all kinds of different festivals, but this was one that we as a DDA are not just willing to let go, but it's also not, we need to figure out a better way. In the past, it's always been volunteer. DDA's directors have come and gone and helped out, but we definitely need to have that on part of a work session, come up with a, or let some stuff go. So I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
And Jeff, that has nothing to do with DPW. You guys have a huge list, and also the police department, Chief Glass, everybody from the city has absolutely put their time in, and they're doing their portion, just those little coordinating pieces of the whole event and gathering it together. So, they really are being very helpful, and we'll be meeting soon to talk about just the final details.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your department and everything they're doing.
Absolutely. It's a community event, but it kind of falls on, a lot of it falls on the city, DDA, so I don't know if we schedule a meeting or something to talk about. It's not like Hops and Pops where if you don't have a board and a chair, if it goes away, it can go away. It's not that big of a deal. If somebody wants to pick it up, they can. But most people don't want to see that happen with Sleigh Bell. So I would appreciate anybody's thoughts on how to.
Just a
Yeah.
question real quick, just because I am so new.
Yeah.
How is the Forest Festival being handled right now?
Well, the Forest Festival is a chamber event. It's
Okay.
not a DDA event. So but you could probably speak to that better than that.
Yeah, typically, like Carmen and I handled it last year, and the chamber is basically being orchestrator, making sure that the websites are up to date, which we had CBB help. Right now, we don't have CBB help with the websites. We're also taking that on, and, getting up to speed staffing issues there.
So,
It's a little bit
I
different.
get that, yep. So then, my recommendation would be like directly after this year's sleigh bell, because I know Julia and her, I know, working so many hours, and it's going to be fabulous. People are already excited about it. So that momentum is there, right? So we have a DDA board, but we're a board, we're not the whole DDA. And so reaching out to other DDA members that, because this really specifically speaks to downtown, could we, 11 months in advance, form a committee, form some people that are interested in keeping this going, taking some work off your plate, but you and Julia could just, I know you'd be willing to say, this is what we did, this is what needs to continue, and here now you have a committee. You have a committee of people that are interested in keeping it downtown.
You want to head that up?
I am definitely not opposed to being a part of it.
And Julia did say that she would like to come back next year.
Okay.
Would like to, so we have
As a
that
chair.
strength already, that's great. So I would love to work with Julia, but I would love to pull some other people from downtown who also benefit from this into just taking some ownership of it and making it great a second year in a row.
Can I just follow up with what Deanna's saying? Because I feel like if this is people assume, or rightfully assume, that Sleigh Bell is a DDA event. So if there's a committee formed, then shouldn't there be some sort of monthly reporting to this group so that we know where it's at? If we were to do this 11 months in advance, then I feel like there should be some sort of reporting structure so we all know where, if things are going, all of a sudden we've got to gather some resources to try to get horses downtown, then we can help out. But I think that we should have an events coordinator for downtown. And how that manifests itself, I don't know, but just someone who does all of these events.
Yeah.
I've been on the Sleigh Bell Committee for 8 years now, and we've got a lot of new players this year, so I think that's the challenge. There was a very formed committee, but as of the last few months, the meetings have gotten canceled, they've gotten rescheduled, and when you reschedule and people have busy schedules, it's hard for everybody to make it. So I think the basis of the committee's there, and it's always been there. It just needs to be used to its fullest potential. And they're meeting right now, so if you guys are done, I probably need to get over to that meeting.
Yeah.
You're done with me?
Appreciate it.
Okay.
I guess, but my point is we can get into this in detail later, but my point is that the DDA's contract with the chamber does not include any services for festivals or events. And so if we want to, and I'm not sure that that's even on the table, I'm not sure that the chamber even wants it. If we said, hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars, I'm not sure the chamber would want that because they're backing away from events as well. So we need to, if it could be a collaborative thing where we get together with the chamber, and maybe with the CVB, and we all pony up a certain amount of money, but it's just something that we definitely need to look at now and immediately after this event, because there's been an inordinate amount of time spent on this by our DDA director, Christina, which is appreciated, but it also takes away from other things that we contract services for, and takes away from other things that the chamber does. So anyway, I just bring that up just to keep it front and center.
Side note, is there a new director to the CVB?
No. Do you want me to speak to that?
Sure, that'd be great, yeah.
So I sit on the CVB board also, representing the casino, and we are in the process right now of hunting for an executive director. But there's 2 positions really that need to be filled over there.
Thank you.
And just to address Jeff's comments,
Yeah.
the chairs are calling a meeting to hire that and just sending out calendar invites and assisting with that coordination. So being the meetings are scattered, but it's not a directive by the DDA,
Right.
they have to take responsibility for that. But I do not believe this committee is active or has been active, and it won't be efficient moving forward.
Okay.
So just so you know,
No, appreciate that.
we see different, we have a difference of opinion on that.
Okay.
So, past sleigh bell, work is being done on the annual audit.
Is this the merchant's report?
No, I'm still on the director
Okay,
report, we
sorry.
kind of sidebarred with sleigh bell, sorry
Okay.
about that. I have the draft audit right here, which is great bedtime reading. So I will review that, give it over to you, Kyle, and then we'll sign off on that draft audit, you can do the final, and everybody will receive a copy of that audit. So just getting all the paperwork to the accountants as they request and things like that. The audit accountants has been part of the work this month. The revolving loan fund that we talked about last month, we've got that back and active with Jamie Hallett, and she has made her first payment. We've got the amortization schedule set, and so all those documents are ready to go and working.
Currently, there's 2 loans out.
Yes,
Okay.
one that hasn't been paid on ROB boutiques, and I did not have a chance to send a letter with the other work that has been done, so I'll get one of those letters out.
Great.
To try and start collection on that as well. And then last week I attended the Michigan Downtown Association Conference. It was really great to be in a room with other downtown directors, asking questions about their facade grants and programs that they have and what's been successful for them. A lot of the conference was focused around public spaces, which I know we had infrastructure to work on before that, but that would be really exciting to work on in the future, having more welcoming public spaces, whether it be downtown or, as we talk about food truck courts and things like that. There was just some neat things that other towns are doing, but it really was great to connect. I think very worthwhile at the time, because I can ask specific questions about what they've done or what we've done or what their streetscapes look like or who they've worked with, things like that. So, and that's what I have for the director's report. Does anybody have any questions? Merchant meetings, we had one last month about sleigh bell. There was the Tuesday after the board meeting, so I could give them updates for the board. They're once a month still on Zoom, just because it's a little more convenient for merchants to be able to log in from wherever they're at. So COVID kind of taught us that. We only had 6 or 8 people when the meetings were live, where we can get up to 15 people on some of the merchant meetings, just depending on what the topic is. We did change the soup cook-off during sleigh bell to be the sleigh scavenger hunt. We have 29 participating merchants within the whole district, which includes like War Hardware as well as Rebel Sanctuary, so we're kind of got both ends covered along with River Street. Some are excited, some are like, wonder how this is going to go. I guess that we've done this in the past. That's it. Only other thing is when some ladies' nights coming up in December. So,
Dates on those?
December 8th for Ladies' Night and December 15th for Men's Night. And there have been events created on the Downtown Manistee Facebook page.
And those are downtown merchant organized events, right?
Yep, I've just done the marketing and put the event out.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I ask you a question? Is there a social district during sleigh bell?
Yes, the social district is 12 months out of the year. It's 10 or 11 in the morning till 10 at night. I'm thinking of keeping the banners up. I know that DPW doesn't recommend it, but that's the way we can sign the district. The banners are $37.50, so I don't know if we should pull down. I'm debating whether we should pull down 12 of them, leave 12 of them up, or whatever the cap is, and then we can put the other ones back up in the
Is there
summer
an
months.
amount we need to be legal?
We just have to sign it.
Do you think-
Yeah, I just thought kind of we would just scatter them down so you knew you were still in the social
Is
district.
snow removal, is that the issue?
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Okay.
But I kind of want to test it, because it would be cool to have banners all winter, so I wanted to see how these held up, so it's kind of a test.
Okay.
We might have to purchase some this spring, but they're not that expensive, and that might be a worthy cost.
Just a comment on those banners. They will get hit by the snowplows, so they're not going to be able to stay as they are. But it's possible to flip them around and have them on the sidewalk side. Now, that will involve some labor to do that, but that might be a way to get it to kind of work.
Thanks, Barry. Any questions for Christina on merchant stuff? Okay. Economic development?
I did
This
come up.
is a report for Mark Miller.
This is a report from Mark Miller. I did give you all a copy of his actual written report that he normally gives me, just so you can read it, and if you had any questions, I'll try and do that when the board packets go out from now on. It was one of those late night, oh, this maybe you'll have other questions. Some of the big things are that MEDC CEO visit, that was last week, or maybe it was the week before, October 27th. But they did a walking tour of downtown, talking about the gateway, talking about the successes, and then also talking about the opportunity for grants or loans or things on the river side, so to connect the businesses to the water a little bit more, and then what the benefits of the redevelopment, right, community are. Gateway work continues with Brownfield and weekly calls, trying to get that coordination. As you can see, the fencing is up and some of the banners, which were limited by the sign ordinance. For condos, the interior work continues. The city, there's a postponement on the land sale because they have to do some other work to transfer land, to swap it from what's there to another area. Deck expansion will happen later. The redevelopment ready community meetings were held with several several owners with the MEDC committee or community development program. And also we've been working on the priority sites for downtown and creating sales sheets and things like that to hand out when developers are interested. So the Chamber now kind of has a whole economic development packet, and then it also connects with the MEDC website from ours. Washington Street is still progressing. It'll be a mixed-use project with a housing component. And then Match on Main, the deadline submission was November 9th. It was a $25,000 matching grant. We did have one applicant for that, and that was submitted. So we'll see how that goes. And then continuing food truck development discussions. And we have those on our lot. Just to find the two potential sites. It's looking like the two popular sites would be down by the marina or at the park if they're open, but that's privately owned, so we have to make sure that they would be open. The food trucks really need electric, so there is some infrastructure work, because I even get that with the Sleigh Bell food truck court. They don't want to run generators. They want a place where they can actually plug in, and I don't know if that's something that could be needed, and they pay for that time or something like that. But
my recollection of the proposal for the Gateway project was that there was going to be sort of a little startup area over by Memory Lane Detailing. Is that a potential spot for a food truck court?
it hasn't been well received.
Okay.
So as of right now, it's a no.
So where are we with the electric issue?
We have, that's the part that I think has to be sorted out. I'm sure Mark will be working on that a little bit more to figure out, again, if the art park is kind of the direction that we may want to head, then we would have to get their approval and then figure out funding to get that electrical put in for however many food trucks. Each food trucks would need their own electric. Because I don't know how you would split that bill otherwise, or what the options are. So just more work needs to be done on that infrastructure piece. Mark and I have talked about it several times to try and figure that out. We can still have it, we can open something without it, but long term, that's what they prefer, to be a viable or interested option. And the goal is, hopefully, if you get them here, they appreciate that and then go to brick and mortar.
Okay. Any questions for economic development report?
One of the things, were we going to hear about the Consumers Electric Grant, the $215,000 for the rear of?
Yeah, I did contact Eric at Consumers. He hasn't heard anything, and I have not received an email that we have been disqualified or that we've moved on. So right now, I don't have an update. Oh, yeah, and one more thing on food trucks. There is an addendum going to council on that long-term food truck ordinance, so we can have short-term events. George Saylor and Bill Gamble and I worked on that, and so I think that's going to council either next week or it'll be in 2 weeks to see if that passes. And then independent business on River Street could have a food truck. The one food truck could come 5 times a year, because we don't want to say, hey, they're here every week for $10 or $20, whatever the fee is, when they want to be here all summer.
Right.
So it has to be tied to a local business for a specific event, and they've got to partner with a business, but they can come 5 times before they would have to go back to that long-term ordinance, so. The work was done on that too.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to old business, bond priorities. Somehow we have to figure out how to move this forward. And I think priorities is the key thing here. I had kind of a last minute meeting that the city manager, Bill Gamble, was able to put together with a company that he had worked with in his past post. Gentleman, his name is Patrick, he was from a company called ETC, and they're out of Ann Arbor, and I think they have an office in Traverse City as well, but this gentleman came down sort of last minute and did a walkthrough to look at our downtown with, I was there, Christina was there, Stacy, and then the city manager. And they do, I guess I would call it landscape architecture in downtowns and commercial areas, so that it's definitely a bent more on renewable and environmental, using environmental materials and am I saying that correctly?
Green,
Yeah.
green communities.
Yeah. Permeable pavers, reusing rainwater, that sort of thing. So it was a different slant on it than what I've seen before, but what came out of that is there seemed to be, we need to prioritize, if we're going to bond, where we want this money spent, and we need to get more specific so we can draft this letter of intent that, excuse me, Ed's sort of waiting on us for. So I think we probably need to schedule another bond priority meeting so we can move this forward. Also had a meeting with the college in regards to the project that's supposed to take place on the riverfront here that we're funding. And sort of, Bill Gamble was there, Connie, who was the CFO of the college, Christina and I, Jeff and Ed, thank you, Jeff McCool. So we kind of took a step back because Bill's new to this process. There was a lot of conversations that took place with the former city manager, but just what's the best way to fund this and who's responsible for what when it's funded and who's going to draw it, who's going to design it. So there's a lot of moving parts there. It's not as far along as we thought and would like. So where did we leave that, Christina, in terms of how to move forward?
The city will get back to the DDA when they have decided if they want it as an internal project through the city where they would general contract it, and then we would give DDA funds to the city for reimbursement, or if they would like the college to be the general contractor to do the work, and then the DDA would reimburse the college. So it can go forward either way. It sounds like with the bond, it is a bondable project. It also has to tie in, so it might take a few steps back until we're ready with the rest of the package. The letter of intent to the bond council has to have everything approximately that we're doing in it before it can be bonded. And we can't spend any DDA money. It's not reimbursable if we spend it before the letter of intent.
And part of the issue is that most of this takes place on college property. And so if it's something that the DDA pays for, then that the college needs to grant the city an easement on this property, and then it becomes the responsibility of the city to maintain it. So they seem willing to do that, but I'm not so sure that's what we want and had intended. Do we want, I think the question is do we want the city to have more park property to maintain versus, you know, and versus the college continue, or it'd be the college's, it still would be the college's property, but the city would have the right of way over it, just like they do with the rest of the Riverwalk. So I think we need to back up a little bit and look at long-term what the best
Well, so my suggestion is, separate the thinking a little bit about this. Easement is a blanket term. It could be an easement that grants you rights for this much or for this much. Same with responsibilities for it. So the structure isn't, that structure isn't as important as the details that go into it.
Okay.
And that objective, of not taking on, more expensive stuff, I mean, that's to be worked out. But, let the structure be what it has to be to move the project forward. We'll negotiate details.
I think the original thought was that the college would manage the project, they'd design it, and we would pay for it.
Yeah.
It's just not that simple now. We may need to get another legal opinion on how we can spend the money, because I see it a little bit differently. I think the DDA has the power to spend money differently than a municipality does. But there's some differences of opinion there. My opinion doesn't count, it's a legal thing, so.
Well, it's when you start getting into bonding. And speaking of that, what is what's the amount of money, the minimum amount of money that you would want to bond for? Because there's a good operational reason to separate these two things. To have the bonding for the WSCC project separate from the rest of the bonding. It's easier to talk about the priorities that way. That part with WSCC is going to happen, right? And it should, in my mind, be on a separate track than the other million, that we have to bond for. So if it's possible to separate those two.
Are you talking about doing two bonds? I think that.
Or bundling the one from WSCC with something else. It's about the number of times, the size of the issue, and the number of times you want to go.
I think the thought there was, we were comfortable in our budget of bonding for 1.5 million.
Right.
And
isn't about 400,000 of that for the
250.
250?
And that's the other thing, they're expecting those numbers to change. We've only approved 250,000, but those numbers are numbers from over a year ago. But it was, there were estimates as well. So I think that Ed would probably say it's fairly expensive to bond, and so bonding twice, if one is only for 250,000, probably, that's why we're trying to bundle this all together. But I don't know anything about bonding. So, but I think we need to have a discussion about what the rest of that, if it still is 1.5 million, and 250,000 is to the college, what other funding sources can we come up with to do what we want to do downtown and possibly on the Riverwalk? And the last time, 20 years ago, when the streetscape was done, there was DDA bond, there was property assessments from property owners, and then there was city contribution for streets and that sort of thing. So we need to somehow move this conversation forward so we can.
So we need maybe a special session with Ed and Bill.
I think it would be very helpful to do that again, especially with Bill being new to the table here.
Can I ask you a question? The last time we had a special meeting about bond priorities, there was a lot of discussion about going to some sort of landscape architecture and having some sort of rendering drawn up so we could all kind of get an idea of what vision is. I think you made the case very well with regards to the streetscape downtown, and it's helped me sort of see it from a different perspective. So I guess I think that would mean, for me, would be very helpful to see some sort of vision so that I would talk from a position of having an understanding.
Yeah, and what comes first?
Okay.
Is it a rendering, or is it us deciding we think all the money should go to this?
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's what needs to happen at the next meeting.
Gotcha.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
what you, I mean, my understanding of, you know, the reason that you brought this up was we need the letter of intent in order to contract with a
Okay.
company to get those.
No, we need a letter of intent to bond. The letter of intent to the bonding authority basically says, we're gonna bond for this.
But the cost of contracting with somebody becomes an expense of the bond if you have the letter of intent in place first.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're gonna have to come up with the cost out of our, you know, out of our budget now. Is that a correct
Yes.
way of saying?
Yeah, yeah. And we need to figure out who the players are. Is it just the DDA? Is it the DDA in the city and possibly property owners like it was last time? Because there's no way 1.25 million is gonna cover a streetscape. I mean, if that's what we want to do. Is it gonna be downtown and the Riverwalk, one or the other? We need to get a little bit more specific on what we want.
So at the working meeting, we need to decide, you know, if we can do the letter of intent without having the drawings first.
Don't we have the?
And if we need the if we need the, you know, something more specific, then we take it out of our budget and then do the letter of intent. And then,
It's my feeling that we can decide how we want to spend the money generally without having drawings. We can decide, do we want to spruce up downtown? Do we want to spruce up the Riverwalk or both? I mean, I think we can decide how we want to, where we want to spend the money, not necessarily how.
And we have to put some sort of figures with that, so if we're gonna say we're doing the streetscape, we can have it, this is where we wanna put this money, and we're gonna do these upgrades to the street, and this is the amount of money we're going to bond for. It seemed like that was
Yeah,
good,
that,
but
we
we
could
didn't
be fairly
necessarily
vague
have
in
to
that regard. 'Cause we
have
already-
bids at that point, and then we could put our fees in, so
We already know our comfort level in terms of how much we can afford to bond for. You know, we can't go to 3 million, we basically said it's about $1.5 million. So,
And
so-
Riverwalk, just so you guys know, the MEDC has an EDA grant, and there's, I can't remember how many done, Mark is better at that one than I am, but we are looking at that for the Riverwalk.
That's fantastic.
And so that could be a higher amount for that, and that is then sent to Bill Gamble, and I'm going to send an email to see if he needs any assistance from the DDA with that, and then we'll continue working forward. So we are looking at options for the Riverwalk so that we can hopefully try and specify where we want to spend that 1.25.
Can we add one more thing to that? When we talk about this, you know, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, you know, can we get some money out of that for streetscape, Riverwalk, both?
and,
We'll be watching that.
yeah. So with the board's, thank you, but with the board's permission, can I ask Christina to help us schedule another special bond meeting? Try to get as many people there, Ed and Bill specifically from the city.
It probably will have to be after Thanksgiving. I believe that schedule is kind of tapped.
Yep.
And then there's some vacation time and also for Bill. So if that's okay with the board, it might have to be like that week after Thanksgiving we could try for. That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's start trying.
I'll get with Kelly.
Can I also ask a question? Wasn't there at one point, I don't know if it was Ed or somebody else who gave us a timeline for the bonding process? Because it's quite a long process,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that, you know, we had that special meeting on September 1st.
Yeah.
Right? This is now like over 2 months later. I think that whatever this meeting is, I think that we need to set, like, this is what we want to walk away from this meeting with and make sure that we achieve it, because I don't think that we can keep pushing this back month after month after
You're in
month.
charge.
No, our timeline is fluid depending on when we make that. So just know that we don't necessarily, what Ed sent us will just move out. It's up to the DDA to drive that timeline. So
Right.
you're correct, if we don't start setting
So
it,
it's
it
a
just
big
keeps
process.
pushing it back, and then we have to.
But to Ed's point, this week, interest rates are really good, and we need to, if we want to do this, we need to do it.
Yeah, and the point's well taken. The clock hasn't started on that timeline.
No.
But, you know, the farther we push this out, the farther the end is gonna be.
And we have a commitment to the college that we have to
Yeah.
fulfill.
Which Connie was a little flexible.
Yeah, no, Connie was
Yes.
great,
Yeah.
but the project still, you know, that's,
Yeah.
okay, need to move on. We good with bond stuff? Thank you for trying to get a meeting together.
Yes, and I contacted another couple streetscape people too, so that we can kind of review them on top of these. So,
Parking. Is there any discussion in regards to parking?
I thought that last month it was a very compelling argument, a way to bring in some additional funds into downtown and during a time when it sounds like we need them. But we didn't really explore it much beyond that, right? And I don't know, I'm also quite new and I don't know what other conversations have been had, what other pros and cons have been discussed.
Are you referring to meters?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
I'll just inject my opinion, because I am opinionated on this matter. I've been in business here for 22 years. Parking's not an issue. We don't, that's my opinion. We do not have a parking issue. There's lots of parking downtown. There's parking lots that are empty. There's, there may be a light enforcement problem, but I don't think a way to fix that is parking meters. It's not something that is done in towns our size. We have not hardly scratched the surface of dealing with enforcement. My limited experience with Chief Glass is that he is very willing to help out in isolated instances. But I think that there's a lot of things that can be done if individuals feel like there are issues. What I do as a landlord is we write it into our leases that employees and tenants cannot park into our parking zones. They have to park in public lots. That requires me to enforce it. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done, but I don't see parking as an issue if we have empty parking lots. It's more of an awareness.
If you're the owner though, and you're the offender, how do you regulate that?
It would be, you know, well, you as the owner, you're not going to. Somebody else is going to have to approach you. But I just, are we gonna change the infrastructure of downtown and put in parking meters because a couple of building owners, you know, violate that? I don't think it's a solution, a long-term solution.
So there was, I mean, just to articulate the, you know, the case here, there are two, as I remember, there are two big issues here. One was, you know, contention over, you know, businesses that had, that didn't have a lot of walking customers that occupied parking spaces with their employees, which blocks up parking for other businesses that do need the parking, you know, their customers do need to get to them. Is that a fair way? All right, so that's one issue. The second is about completely different. It's about foregone revenue. We have no tools in the public sector. We don't have any tools right now for capturing revenue from visitors to Manistee. Even the lodging taxes are collected by the state. They don't come back to the local area. And so we have a whole bunch of public space devoted to large amounts of visitors, you know, tons of park space, a beautiful downtown. and we don't capture revenue, and people were throwing around numbers like $400,000 when you do the study and say, how much revenue are we passing on? And there are ways, you know, the modern sort of parking platforms allow you to, you know, differentiate between different kinds of users. You know, residents could pay a different rate or no rate at all. So that was.
Okay, I appreciate that. I would argue that TIF dollars is our form of revenue. And if it wasn't for residents and visitors shopping in stores downtown, those stores paying rent to buildings and those buildings paying TIF dollars, we wouldn't have any income. So TIF dollars, that's how we are funded, is through TIF dollars, as we know. So we can't forget that.
Sure.
But to me, I would see it as a penalty. We have a lot of customers that come and go, and I don't think that we would have those, you know, having a coffee shop, I don't think we would have those customers if every time they stopped in, sometimes several times a day, oddly enough. If they had to pay for parking for a few minutes, I just don't see it as I don't see it as a problem, number one, but I don't see it as a viable option for a few violators. But I'm the only one talking here.
Deanna's not here, she has a passion, being that it's actually happening outside of her store. And so I would think that, you know, she has to go this one, but she finds that owners are parking directly in front of her store, so it is a limited factor for her.
I think if we go outside our community here, we'll find the same argument in every single small downtown in the United States. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and every 5 years this pops up and we talk about it again. And along with business hours, and then it goes away. And every 5 years, Lee Trucks brings up parking meters. So I've done this a couple times before, and I'm happy to do it again. But if nobody else is I'm gonna move on. Moving on. New business, meeting schedule.
Just wanted to, in your packet, I put all the meeting schedules, the meeting schedule together for 2022. I need more coffee this morning from the shop. Heather's requesting it from the city. I thought it would be better if everybody had it on their calendars ahead of time. And so, looking for board approval for that schedule.
Looks good to me.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Jody?
Well, can I ask a real quick question? So if I can't make it a meeting and I am asked, am I okay with continuing to just email you and Christina?
Yeah.
Is that the expectation? Okay.
Yeah.
For an excused absence?
Yeah.
Two or three, there's an excuse, or
Yeah.
there's an absence for what I can get off the board.
And that's the other question that I had, so, okay.
Are there meetings that don't work for you, Jody? Is this?
No, but every once in a while, something pops up
Okay,
and
so you're just
I'm like the night
sporadic then.
before, I'm
Yeah.
emailing you guys and I'm not sure if that's a protocol that you prefer or not.
Yeah, I think email works for me, that works for Kyle.
All right.
And I can send you calendar invites for all of these dates if you'd like me to do that. So you have them ahead and then just attach the board packet, which would then send you an invite to the meeting. I'm not sure if everybody's using the calendar.
That would be
invite
Yes,
feature.
that would be fantastic.
Okay,
That'd be great.
we're revamping this for a
Yes.
year in, we've done this. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll do
Yeah.
that.
So this is something that needs approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then we put it on the city's website and
Great.
on the public meeting calendar.
Thank you, Kelly.
Anybody want to make a motion for it then?
Sure. I'll make a motion.
Also.
And also.
Whatever.
Motion from Jody, second from Bruce, thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Public comment?
Can I suggest something?
Please.
Some people have asked me when I go to the coffee shop downtown, and he said, why don't you put on some lights at that art park and kind of spruce it up down there? And they said they thought that would maybe help, I don't know. And different places in town put lights on, like Travers does.
Yeah.
And draws people to the downtown.
Appreciate that. Yeah, specifically to the art park, it's private property, so there's only so much we can do, but we're working on that. But yeah, something we can certainly look at if we do a streetscape design as well.
Yep, okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Barry?
Yeah, I don't know if I should jump into this or not, but as you're talking about the bonding, it's been a year now since I've been off the board, but what I want to just raise, and it's something that, having been on the board for about 10 years prior to that, and spending about 5 years working through the TIF plan that was only adopted 2 years ago by City Council in this. The fact that you're not using that document to drive your decision process concerns me, because what I see is every time the board turns over, oh, well, now we'll go work on these other things. That TIF plan is supposed to be a 20-year plan. It's supposed to lay out what projects you're supposed to be working on. That's what council approved. That's what this board approved. Now, the reality is none of us can predict the future. But that should then be a living document. You should be updating it. You should be moving it as you change, as opposed to, oh, we did that, we'll go sit on a shelf and we'll look at it 20 years from now when we have to do another TIF renewal. It just seems that this is all disconnected.
I'm not sure that the TIF plan can be a living document.
You can always use it as a basis of an ongoing document. I mean, yes, you don't need to change it,
Okay.
but just dropping it and then starting off with something that's completely unrelated, what's the purpose of that document saying, oh, over the next 20 years we're going to do these things if you have no intention of actually following?
Could I ask you, Barry, because all of the things that we've been talking about in our conversations about bond priorities so far have been things from the TIF document, right? What we're talking about is relative. What we're hashing around is relative priorities because we can't afford anything. So how would you suggest that we incorporate that better?
I guess I disagree a little bit, because I think when that process was going through, there wasn't an idea of doing a new streetscape. There was only an idea of maintaining and essentially rebuilding things that needed infrastructure. I'm detecting much more of a sense of we need a new streetscape, and that wasn't part of that. And if that's where you want to go, that's fine. But I think the cost of that is going to dwarf the dollars that were originally thought in that plan. So I think that's the one thing I'm seeing. Things like parking, obviously last month's meeting when Kyle wasn't here had a very different tone than this month's meeting with Kyle here. That's a huge infrastructure piece that, seemed like, oh, this is a good idea, and now maybe not. So it just seems that more emphasis should be placed on using that as a basis and treating it as a living document and migrating it forward. Even if you're not going to publicly adopt a revision to it, still use it as a document to move forward.
I appreciate that suggestion, and I don't think you're wrong. And I think part of it is semantics and the words that we use and how we want to spend money. It did come up this week in the meeting that Ed was at, and he felt like the things that we're talking about fit into it, but it probably should be a document that's in front of us on a more regular basis.
Well, the points, we're talking about elements, packaging the things that we want to do together and talking about it, as a streetscape upgrade. The individual elements of the streetscape are in the TIF plan, right? But we're talking about assembling that differently. Yeah. And there should be a connection between the TIF plan and what we're talking about. We should articulate what that connection is. And points well taken, if we want to deviate from that, we should
Yeah.
we should formally say, here's how we're deviating.
And I use the term streetscape, and it may mean different things to different
That's
people.
exactly right.
So, yeah, appreciate that, Barry. Anybody else? Public comment? Thanks for being here. Comment, board member comments? Thanks for your time. Looking forward to getting together and talking about bond as well. Hopefully we can get something on the calendar. And our next meeting is
December 8th.
December
Thanks,
8th.
Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn. Thanks, Bruce.
Nobody wants to talk over each other.
Is there a second?
Sorry.
All right, thanks, everybody.